Howdy, y'all. It's Curious Raven. I'm finally back. I know I have taken about a couple weeks off. I had a lot going on with my mom, as you know, and traveling and getting back home, situating everything here and doctor's appointments, and it's been hectic. But we're back. I will be posting another video tomorrow as well, and then on Saturday. So let's get back into the groove and let's read some scary haunted house stories. Number 1, I just told my grandma I heard a female giggle in the corner of my bedroom after I woke up. She told me she heard a giggle this week in her bedroom too in the morning. She chucked it up to be my grandpa, perhaps laughing in his sleep. Our bedrooms are in one house facing the garden. We previously encountered a strange entity appealing in those 3 bedrooms facing the garden. Me and my cousin drew a picture of it separately without describing it, and the drawings were almost identical. It had huge wavy tangled hair, was child size, and had huge black eyes or holes for eyes. We have no idea what this might be, or even if the giggles come from the same entity. Any ideas of what this might be? Number 2, this evening, I was watching a movie in my basement with my dogs. Suddenly, they looked up towards the stairs like someone came in through the garage. I heard some footsteps and called out upstairs to see if maybe someone from my family had come home. The second I called out, the steps stopped. My dogs were very on edge, and so I went upstairs to investigate. The steps were very loud and very distinct as they moved around my house. My dog started wailing and wanted to leave the house. I called out again and the steps stopped again, and then some loud banging followed. Someone sounded like they were clearly walking around and responding to my calls. I went into the rooms where the footsteps that were clearly walking around, but there was no one there. When I came back into the kitchen, different lights were on. I didn't turn them on. I got freaked out and grabbed my dogs and drove to my neighbor's house. At that point, I know my family members would be back later, so I waited it out. Before anyone asked, we did check to make sure that no one broke in and there were no physical signs. I don't think what was in my house was a physical human being. I'm posting this on a throwaway, as I'm not sure what happened to me. I was wondering if anyone could shed some light. Am I just losing my mind or something? What doesn't make sense to me is how my dogs were so freaked out and aware of it as well. Number 3, I had a few paranormal experiences throughout my life, but this one is the most recent. Over the past year of living in this house, I sometimes hear a soft female voice ask a question when I am not paying attention. It's not the vents because I can hear the voice when the vents are completely off. It's not the pipes because I know what those sound like. I can never quite make out what she's saying, except for once I asked her to come closer and she did. She asked her question, and it sounded like she said, "Can you hear me?" Told her obviously I could, but nothing ever came of that. I don't think anyone believed me for a while. Then one day my parents and I came home from a trip, and my brother and my cousin both said that they heard her as well. My cousin had come over one day on his lunch break and didn't know that we were out of town, and my brother was at work. He opened the front door and called out, and heard a soft female voice say, "Hello?" That night when my brother got home from work, he was in the process of getting ready for bed, and he got to his room and he was closing his door when he heard the same soft voice say, "Have a good night." It scared him so bad that he walked around the whole house with a blade, but of course didn't find anyone. Question lady seems to be nice. Sometimes I wake up feeling her tapping on my headboard or on the mattress. Once I couldn't sleep because she was humming to herself. But I always have a calm feeling when she's around. And even my sister has met her. She met her long before the rest of us. She woke up one night the feeling that someone was standing next to her bed. So she reached out and felt a tingling sensation, as if she was touching something that wasn't really there. She likes to say she shook hands with the ghost. Question Lady isn't the only ghost we have here, but the other one is not so nice. He likes to be scary, so I try not to talk about them too much because even talking about her seems to invite him. I might post more about them later, but definitely not when I'm in my own home. Number 4. To begin, I have to mention that the house is an old farmhouse. It's set out in the country with farm acreage in front and state land towards the back. Love the location with only 10-minute drive into town. We only have one close neighbor, so it's pretty private for the most part. Previous owner had bought the house on an estate auction since the person who owned it died. Elderly lady who grew up in this house and actually had a lot of acres along with the house. I was told she died in the house. They found her days later. I also heard her son had died at the house too. They said he hanged himself in the garage, even though I don't know for sure. The house has had many updates through the different owners, including myself. But I don't really know how old the house is. I believe it's very old, and I've tried looking into the history of this house. I wouldn't be surprised if it was built in the early 1900s. After we bought the house, we heard stories of the house being haunted from the previous owners. Never imagined it being true. My first experience was when our dog was in the living room late one night. She was whimpering like she was afraid of something and looking towards the wall or even one of the bottom rooms, but there was no one there. I called her over to me, thinking to myself how odd that was. One day, I had just taken a shower and heard someone tapping on the door handle. The handle was pretty loose, and it could only make that noise unless you press or tapped on it downward. I said just a minute, then opened the door thinking it was one of my kids needing to use the bathroom, but no one was there. I called out, but no one was near. I asked everyone, and they all said they'd been outside playing. I've always been a skeptic, so I just brushed it off. There had to be a logical explanation, right? There is one room in the house. Whomever has slept there has felt the bed shift, as if someone had sat on the edge of the bed while they slept. All 3 of my kids, all grown now, experienced this when they slept in that room at different stages in life. Funny thing is that they all didn't know about it until years later. I had told my son not to mention it to my youngest daughter, or she might be too afraid. Come to find out that she felt it too. My husband has heard someone calling his name when he was sleeping at least 7 times in a 3-month period. He also heard footsteps downstairs when he's been home alone. One time, I had just gotten home from work and was talking to my husband. Then my cell phone starts ringing, and it's the house phone calling my cell phone. We both looked at each other, knowing we're the only ones at home. I asked him, "Did you try calling me before I got home and that's why the house phone is calling me back?" Of course he said no, and that was very weird. I heard my daughter's voice calling out to me saying, "Mom," when she wasn't even home. And my husband has heard my daughter call out the word, "Mom," too, when he was home alone too. Another time, my husband and I heard a clear male voice coming from the back room in the house. I thought it was my son, but no one was there. I never felt scared at our home. Wait, I did feel scared once when I was home alone. I had been home from work and relaxing when all of a sudden I heard something fall down in the upstairs bedroom. It was pretty loud. It was 10:30 p.m., and that really freaked me out. I hurriedly went to the kitchen and grabbed the biggest knife we had. I kept looking upstairs, wondering if I should go investigate what had caused that loud noise. My husband was at work, so I called my son, who at the time was at a party 30 minutes away. I told him what happened and that I was freaking out. He comes over with several of his friends to the house. They're all carrying locked and load and do a sweep of the outside and inside of the house. My son even checked the crawl space under the house. They didn't find or see anything that could have made the noise or any intruders. I felt safe after that. I've heard the wood floor creaking 10 feet away from me and looked knowing that I'm home alone. But I didn't feel a bad vibe other than that experience with the upstairs noise. There's many more things that others experienced in our home, but I'll stop here. Number 5. When I was 15, I started to develop insomnia, so I would always be up late, unable to sleep. One time when I was awake, I felt if there was someone there with me. It felt as if I could feel my great aunt watching over me. I had chills down my whole body. It felt like my heart was in my stomach. The next morning, I came upstairs to see my parents, and my mom told me that my great aunt died that night. Also, when I told my mom about the story, she said she had a similar experience. When my mom got married to my dad, my great aunt gave them a wedding present. I don't remember what it was. It might have been a rock. She was artistic and made a bunch of pottery, so it really could have been anything. And when I was 14, we moved from my childhood home to a different house closer to my school. When we moved, my mom lost the wedding gift from my great aunt. She went through all the boxes, cleaned out every room, and couldn't find it. And when my great aunt died, she looked even harder for it and still couldn't find it. But on my great aunt's birthday following her death, the wedding present appeared on the top of the shelf where she used to keep it at the old house. Number 6. My mother-in-law has long expressed that strange things happen to her no matter where she goes. Long ago, she would come home to her shot glass collection being lined up on the coffee table every day, and every day she would put them back up on their shelf. She lived alone after her first husband's traumatic death. She often lost or misplaces things. Recently, it's been small things adding up or outright disappearing out of thin air. She was with her friend and her friend's phone rang saying, "John is calling," which is the name of her deceased husband. They answered it, and it was just static on the other line with no call history when they hung up. Her and her friend have been seeing a man with cobwebs on him in the Ring doorbell camera when they look in the mirror, the car. She has had several encounters that could be passed off as coincidence or electrical problems or forgetfulness, but when too many coincidences add up, you start to recognize a pattern. Anyone have advice? See a priest, psychic, burn sage, get the tattoo from Supernatural like Sam and Dean? Number 7. Longtime reader of this page. I've had quite a few strange occurrences, but this one house I lived in was a lot. I lived with 3 friends, all in our early 20s. The house would have been built in the 1900s or earlier. My room, I would sleep terribly. I'm a great sleeper, and as soon as my lights were off, I would feel a suffocating feeling of darkness. It's hard to explain. Air would feel thick. One night, I fell asleep on my back with my knees up, as I had a sore back. I woke up to the feeling of someone rhythmically tapping hard, thudding on my kneecaps. I was frozen in fear as it was dark and was a force feeling. Bolted out of the room and ran to my friend's room. When I would shower, I would hear a roommate arrive at home, stomping in the wooded hallway, etc., typical loud roommate movements, and then would open the door to start chatting after the shower and the house would be empty. Would text everyone and not a single person had been home. At this stage, I was worried. Also about an intruder, of course, but I had a feeling of dread every time. We had a new male roommate move in, a really sweet guy. He was decorating his room when moving in and hung across decoration on an existing hook. He was kind of goth. A while later, it caught his eye, and it was swinging side to side against the wall. He had just moved in, so he didn't want to seem weird and tell us, but this guy was spooked. We found out when things got worse, and we all discussed it. Another roommate had a wall in her room with a walk-in wardrobe area behind it. One night, she woke up to see what she thinks was a person peeking around, staring at her, like the exact silhouette, and screamed for us to help. And there was nothing there. Well, no real person anyway. Last thing was, we had lights which kept glowing. We asked our electrician friend to come check the attic space as it was an old house and could have been anything. He went up there while we were all at work. Apparently, he had his torch up there and it was kind of dark, and he had shown it on a big framed painting. He got a fright and went to look closer, but then it disappeared. Like, searched the whole perimeter of the space, and this giant painting was gone. He got such a bad feeling over him that he almost fell out of the manhole trying to scramble out. Anyway, that is all. We also talk about it at times, but obviously moved out as soon as possible. Sometimes I drive by that house and still get a shiver. Such bad energy. Alright, y'all, that was the end of the stories today. I hope y'all enjoyed this collection. I'm very happy to be back. I feel like I'm getting back into my groove again. Just know that I love y'all very much, and I've missed y'all. I will see y'all on Thursday. But until then, remember, it's scary out there. Please like and subscribe.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross